special someone who brought in the Moody Cow jar. Thank you, Bonnie. Today's reading is a poem by Pablo Neruda called Keeping Quiet. And now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Let's not, for once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. So I'm not really going to go. You're stuck with me until the end of the service. So there's no question in my mind that many of us, if not most of us, are running on adrenaline and caffeine these days. Pretty much everyone I know is overscheduled, overbooked, overworked, and exhausted. I'm not sure why we do this to ourselves or how we have spun so far out of control with all of our rushing and running and doing. But I do know it's high time we all figure out how we might take a moment in our busy lives to take a breath, to take a pause, and to take care of ourselves. Now there's a mountain of information out there about this thing called self-care. Lots of folks are talking about it, and lots of folks are making money off of talking about it. But what I hope to share with you today is that self-care, which is also a form of self-compassion, can be very simple as taking a deep breath or taking a moment for a cup of tea. Self-care or self-compassion means paying attention, caring for and being compassionate, non-judgmental, and mindful with ourselves. Being mindful is practicing mindfulness. So what is mindfulness? One definition of mindfulness is simply being aware in the present moment. It's being aware of what you're experiencing while you're experiencing it. Practicing mindfulness can be meditation, yoga, exercise, cooking, any activity or non-activity that allows you to be fully present to the moment. The popularity of mindfulness and self-compassion is at an all-time high, resulting in scores of books, CDs, websites, programs, courses, teacher trainings, and even cell phone apps on the subject. There's no small amount of research that shows how well mindfulness works in schools, corporations, prisons, and even hospitals, for both the patients and hospital staff. At Seattle Children's Hospital in the Spiritual Care Department, our mission is to provide spiritual care not only to the patients and their families, but to the staff members as well. How do staff members manage to do the complex and complicated work of healing sick children while attending to the sadness and grief that so often accompanies this kind of work? And how can we as chaplains attend to these staff members who are continually dealing with difficult diagnoses, new procedures, and new technologies on a daily basis while processing children's illnesses and deaths? Staff members say they're too busy for self-care to attend any kind of regular support group or activity, But the hectic pace, the losses, and the grief mount up, and staff members break down and burn out. Fortunately, a few years ago, we heard of a program taking place in other hospitals called Tea for the Soul. Though I was a little skeptical of its success, I agreed to implement a pilot Tea for the Soul program at Seattle Children's. Tea for the Soul involves taking a pot of hot water, tea, and snacks to an inpatient unit or a department, and inviting hospital staff members to take a moment for a cup of hot tea and a slice of cake or a piece of fruit. I started the pilot for the Tea for the Soul program at Seattle Children's on the intensive care unit. For our Tea for the Soul pilot, I scheduled the teas to happen once every other month so staff could count on it happening on a regular basis. Secondly, I chose to bake cakes and other desserts myself for Tea for the Soul, as homemade goodies are especially appreciated by the staff members, and baking happens to be one of my mindfulness activities. Finally, after hosting the first Tea for the Soul in the hospital one afternoon, the next morning I received several email messages from staff members who worked the night shift and asked why they didn't have Tea for the Soul. Since then, I now host Tea for the Soul for a couple of hours during the day shift, as well as for a couple of hours during the night shift. Though it can be a long day for me, the night shift is so deeply grateful to have this event that it more than makes up for the longer hours. For a Tea for the Soul event, I straighten and rearrange a conference room on the unit. It's really important to be close to wherever that department or that unit is. With the tables set up against the wall and the chairs placed in an informal circle around the edge of the room, I place colorful tablecloths on the tables where I arrange the food, heat the water for the tea, and start the iPod player with a playlist of acoustic guitar and piano music. On another table, I lay out cards with inspirational poetry, prayers, and artwork that I create. Finally, I make a cup of hot, spicy tea, and the smell of cinnamon and cloves fills the room. As staff members walk into the room, see the lovely setting, hear the quiet music, and smell the spicy tea, the tension falls away from their faces. It's noticeable. They often take a deep breath and stand for a moment in the doorway saying, "This is just what I needed today." Then they come to the table laden with food, help themselves to tea and cake, and sit down next to me. The conversation ranges from how much it's been raining, to how much they've had to work lately, to how the patient they're caring for that day has been so sick. We may or may not talk about the 3 deaths that occurred last weekend, and we may or may not talk about that one death last year that still grieves them. And we may not talk at all. During Tea for the Soul, the room may be crowded with staff members and conversations. Sometimes it may just be me and one other staff member. But throughout the event, staff members are breathing deeply, are often laughing and sometimes crying. Often when one staff member shares how difficult a patient's situation or death has been, other staff members will gather around with wise words of comfort and support. I'm amazed at how rarely I have to say anything. The staff members themselves are able to offer the care and comfort needed at the time, which nurtures the relationships with each other as well as their resiliency. The Tea for the Soul pilot was a huge success, and the program has become very popular with the staff. It's now in its 10th year, and it gets stronger every year. All the chaplains in spiritual care now offer it regularly to not only the inpatient units, but to most departments throughout the hospital during both the day and night shifts. As I was walking through the halls with the Tea for the Soul cart recently, one of the nurse managers stopped me and said, "Last week we had a meeting to discuss specifically how we are responding to compassion fatigue and moral distress on the ICU, and without hesitation, every nurse there said that Tea for the Soul was the most helpful support to them, and that they made sure they took the time during their shift to attend." And their nurse managers have seen how important it is and how it revitalizes and rejuvenates their staff that they actually go and relieve nurses bedside so that nurses can go to the tea. So how and why does Tea for the Soul work? I think it works partly because Tea for the Soul is a ritual in and of itself, utilizing symbols and the creation of sacred space to enhance its effectiveness. For me, the ritual begins when I bring the cart into the conference room. Before I do anything else, I take a moment to set a prayerful intention that this space will provide rest, beauty, and healing for the next couple of hours. For staff members, the ritual of a tea for the soul begins when they walk into the room which has been transformed into a safe, beautiful, and comfortable space. Within this space, I've quite intentionally attended to all 5 senses. For sight, the harsh lights have been lowered, and they see the table laid out beautifully with colorful cloths, food, and the inspirational cards. For smell, the aroma of cinnamon spiced tea fills the room. For hearing, there's the quiet music and relaxed conversation, and always plenty of laughter. For taste, good homemade cakes, fruit, and popcorn are ready for them to devour, which they do. I've had to bake more and more cakes over the years. And for touch, there are very often hugs for me or each other as they come and go. Almost every staff member who enters a room stops, takes a deep breath, and says something like, "It smells and feels so peaceful in here. I wish we could have tea for the soul every day." The most important aspect of Tea for the Soul is providing a safe, comfortable, and beautiful space in which staff members are quite intentionally and mindfully cared for, and are encouraged to take a breath, remember those for whom they grieve, feel free to express whatever feelings and stories surface, and deepen their connections with their colleagues. The beautiful table setting, the presence of a hospital chaplain, as well as caring colleagues, and of course the delicious food and comforting tea set the space for a warm and inviting place to ease a weary heart. So what does Tea for the Soul have to do with mindfulness, and why am I telling you about it? Because the mindful experience of Tea for the Soul provides us with examples of some very simple and easy ways to take care of ourselves. By telling you about Tea for the Soul, I'm hoping to show that taking care of yourself doesn't have to mean taking a week off from work or traveling to some warm, distant beach, though that would be nice and it works very well too. Just spending a few moments to mindfully attend to your most precious self by taking a few deep breaths, by slowing down, by being mindful of the moment, practicing mindfulness, can bring a little peace to an otherwise crazy, busy day. Terry Freilich, author of Cultivating Lasting Happiness, a 7-step guide to mindfulness, writes that the concept of mindfulness is entered broadly into the mainstream of our culture. It is taught in hospitals all over the country as a part of cardiac rehabilitation, wellness, and other programs. It's been integrated into a number of psychology and counseling modalities. Mindfulness-based stress reduction has been taught to thousands of individuals at the pioneering program founded by John Kabat-Zinn 30 years ago at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. Being mindful, or practicing mindfulness, is being present in the moment. It's slowing down all the crazy chatter that goes on in our brains in order to be aware of what's happening in the moment. Mindfulness is not about clearing the mind of all thoughts. That's impossible. We're humans. Our thoughts occur. That's all right. Nor is mindfulness magic or a quick fix, and it won't change the realities of the hardship or the nature of our work or our lives. It may, however, provide some ways to handle the stress, decrease our reactivity to it, and increase our focus, resilience, and satisfaction. I think one of the best ways to describe mindfulness is through poetry. So I offer you this poem by Dana Folds, entitled Walk Slowly. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still, and just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, to be, and walk slowly into the mystery. Mindfulness is not complicated. However, it does take some practice. As I mentioned earlier, currently there are hundreds of books, articles, CDs, websites, podcasts, and courses on mindfulness. And if you haven't already done so, I invite you to see if there are any that resonate with you. But I will remind you, mindfulness is not complicated. I love this poem from Lao Tzu. Always we hope someone else has the answer. Some other place will be better. Some other time it will all turn out. This is it. No one else has the answer. No other place will be better. And it has already turned out. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. There's no need to run outside for better seeing, nor to peer from a window. Rather, abide at the center of your being, for the more you leave it, the less you learn. Search your heart and see the way to do is to be. The way to do is to be. So how do we do that, just be? This isn't the time for a class in mindfulness, but as a teacher of mindfulness meditation to patients, families, and staff members at the hospital, I'm often asked for simple and easy ways to practice mindfulness throughout the day. So I'd like to share with you a couple of techniques that may give you an idea of how simple practicing mindfulness can be. Remember, it's not complicated. Think of Tea for the Soul, how simple that is. Basically, it's creating a safe, beautiful space where there's no agenda other than to just breathe. If you spent a couple of minutes every day simply pausing and breathing deeply, you would be well on your way to incorporating mindfulness in every aspect of your day. Here are a few easy and brief mindfulness practices anyone can do pretty much anywhere. The first one is try breathing. It really is an amazing thing. Just pause for a moment and take in some good, deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth, or whatever way is comfortable for you. Just let your awareness rest on your breath for 2 or 3 breaths. How it feels to breathe all the way in and all the way out. You might develop a mindfulness trigger by picking a routine thing you do every day, such as opening or closing your office door, stopping at a stop sign, walking to the bus. A lot of our nurses choose every time they Purell, when they walk into a room, that we have to do that 1,000,000 times a day. So every time they do that from the little thingy on the wall, they'll do that and they just stop. And while they're rubbing their hands together, they just take 3 deep breaths before they burst into that room. And they say it's an amazing, amazing way that they have, that when they get into the room, how different the reaction to the patient and what's going on is. So whenever you do that routine thing, whether it's washing your hands or whatever, just take 3 deep breaths. Once you get in the habit of doing that routine thing mindfully, add a second. Build more and more mindfulness triggers into your day, and over time, this will help you develop mindful living. If focusing on your breath doesn't work for you, try placing one or both of your hands on your heart, your belly, the back of your neck, or your cheek for a couple of minutes, and appreciate the soothing feeling. As you breathe in and out with your hand on your heart, you might do a self-compassion practice called loving kindness. By repeating silently to yourself, may I be kind to myself. May I be at peace. Or may I be well. And those phrases, or whatever phrases, make sense to you and helps to bring love and care to your heart. Or you might try the following. Before, during, or after a difficult situation, pause. Come up with a calming phrase such as, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I relax. Feel your feet firmly grounded and repeat this phrase as you link it to your breath until your heartbeat has slowed and you're breathing a bit easier. At least once or twice throughout your day, look at something simple that you find beautiful. This could be the sky, a flower, or a picture of a loved one. Intentionally take a few moments to notice this beauty and savor the enjoyment for at least a few moments. A very easy way to practice mindfulness, and one that children really like, besides the Moody Cow Mind Jar, is what some call awakening the bell. It's very simple. You can take any bell and leave it out in the house where it's handy. Then periodically throughout the day, ring the bell or awaken the bell. Every time you ring the bell, every time you hear it, Take 3 deep breaths. Just stop what you're doing and breathe deeply. When my husband Brian and I teach our meditation course to families, awakening the bell is one of the favorite activities. Parents report that during times when it's most hectic at home, dinner is boiling over on the stove, children are quarreling underfoot, the dog needs to be fed, someone will remember to ring the bell and everyone simply stops and breathes. When the activity starts up again, it's calmer, not quite as frenetic as before. Now, I will warn you that there may need to be some parameters around awakening the bell. Some families report that when they first got a bell and placed it in an accessible area of the house, the kids rang it every 5 minutes. It's a little too much breathing. But after a bit, it became an occasional but very helpful way to remind family members to pause and take a breath. Each of these methods simply helps us to stop and pay attention, attend to the moment either through the breath or relaxing the body or bringing our awareness to our emotions and feelings. And it's a practice, and the reason why we practice is that then when we're pushed into either challenging situations or situations we're unclear about, we can easily bring our mind back to how we're feeling, what we're thinking, because we've been doing that all along by bringing the mind back to the breath in our mindfulness moments. Mindfulness and self-compassion at home can instill a less frantic pace. Mindfulness and self-compassion at work can ease a stressful day. And mindfulness and self-compassion in community fosters loving kindness. Whether you choose a formal practice such as daily meditation or informal practice such as bringing your awareness to your breath or your eating or walking, I can assure you that your life will feel less crazy busy. Jon Kabat-Zinn writes, although the cultivation of attention and awareness is called mindfulness, it is important to realize that it could equally well be called heartfulness. Because it's not merely about the head and cognition, but about our entire being and our multiple intelligences and ways of knowing and being, including the cultivation of kindness toward oneself and others. Whatever we call it, studies in both medicine and neuroscience are showing that mindfulness is an essential life skill that can have profound consequences in terms of both physical and mental health. It supports and enhances learning, emotional intelligence, our relationships, and overall well-being across the lifespan. So I'll share a final Tea for the Soul story. As I've described, Tea for the Soul is often attended by many people, and there's an ebb and flow of staff members throughout the 2-hour period. As I'm joining in the conversations, providing support, making cups of tea, serving cake, laughing at funny stories, and I've made it a habit to say mindfully to each person as they leave the room, take good care. I haven't known if the staff members really hear the emphasis I place on that or not, but it's important for me to say it to them. Recently, I was giving a presentation on spirituality to new ICU nurses who had been at the hospital for about 3 months, when one young man raised his hand and asked, "You're the chaplain who provides that tea for the soul, right?" I got to attend my first Tea for the Soul last week, and it was great. The beautiful room, the tea, the fabulous cake. But the best part was that when you saw me leaving, you looked into my eyes and said, "Take good care." That meant the world to me. I had had a rough week, and it felt like you really cared about me. I'll never forget that. So simple. Taking a moment to mindfully make a connection, to remind someone they're important and that they should take good care. In this soul-stifling age of multitasking and instant gratification, I try to honor the slow, small movements of mindfulness, gentle self-compassion, and of brewing tea, savoring each fresh cup. I'll end with a haiku. Sipping cup of tea, planets are born, worlds emerge, drink to the last drop. And take good care.